Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers. Fingers in the camera. I'm Petey Ray, your man with no plan. Here with me is my team, my squad, my quartet. We have Brett.
Cheers, love. The cavalry's here.
Yes. Patrick.
Hola.
And Drew.
Oh, well, let's break it down.
It's high noon, everyone, and we're here to talk about some music. It's not high noon. It's like 10. It's like 9 o'clock at night. But that's neither here nor there. Talk about music. We're talking about some stuff. We're talking about some jazz. I'm the provider of the music this week, and I decided, as the least qualified to talk about music ever, especially music that is highly influential and has history and probably needs some proper introduction.
And it's never been talked about by anyone ever before. This is your definitive choice.
Yes.
For information. I hope somebody writes a book report based off of our review.
Yes.
A book report based off of a review.
Oh, no,
Yes.
sorry. Yeah, the book report. Yeah, I just pulled something that I've made fun of somebody for saying in the past. So, all right, there we go.
We're talking about Miles Davis, and we're talking about Kinda Blue. It's an album. It's Miles Davis. It's a bunch of people you know. Like it's a bunch of talented musicians all in one room doing some jazz.
You can say that.
It's a lot of it's a very well known album. If you went to school for music, you know it. I learned about it from my Jazz and Popular Music 101 in community college. You know,
101. I'm going to point that out. 101.
101.
Yes. Well, I think not specifically that. I think it was just the history of jazz and popular music or something like that, rather than theory. I think that's what it was, but more or less.
Probably like 8 hours of a Ken Burns documentary devoted to just this album. So
Yes. Yes.
a lot of panning shots.
Yes. So it's a very well known album. You can know all the analytics and all the technicalities and all that. It's a group of dudes. It's Miles Davis. It's Bill Evans. It's Jimmy Cobb. It's Paul Chambers. It's John Coltrane. It's Julian Adderley. And for one track, it was Wynton Kelly. Hey, Wynton Kelly's back.
Hey, guys.
The analytics say Miles Davis was really good behind the three-point arc. But
Yes.
neither here nor there.
Exactly. he had handles.
It's intangibles.
He had intangibles. He had good hand movements. Good hands.
Grade A show we got going right now, Petey.
High basketball IQ. Right there.
That's right.
Come on. We're really talking a lot about jazz music right now, folks.
Hey, we were talking about Reggie Miller earlier.
Yes, it's just on our brain.
This is
This is just on our brain.
We're going to talk not about what we're talking about, but talk about it.
Let's start with you, Brett. Brett, what were your expectations coming into this album?
I knew what this album was. I hadn't listened to it in a long time. I'm not a horn jazz kind of guy, but there's some saxophone work that when I was in my studies with an old man to teach me how to play jazz, he on guitar, he handed me a bunch of sheet music of saxophone lines because you can steal a lot of guitar stuff from a saxophone. And then you can be like, hey, saxophone, look at this. I'm playing a chord now. And they're like, oh, I can't do that. But yeah, so there's some really cool saxophone stuff that is in this album that, it's really cool. So I that's the stuff that I really remember a little bit. I've gone off the deep end with horn, freeform horn jazz before, where it turns into a bunch of geese honking in your ears, and even somebody who knows what they're trying to listen for still gets lost, kind of a thing. This doesn't have that, so I knew that this was going to be straightforward, a pretty tight package. It's there's a reason why people call this album what they call it. So We'll get into that later.
We'll get into that. Patrick, what expectations did you have coming to this album?
In the long ago, in the before time, in middle school, I played trumpet. And I think I owned this album. I'm like 99.9% sure. And I definitely, in 6th or 7th or 8th grade or so, knew how to butcher at least 2 songs on it. So I am familiar with most of this. It's been a really long time since I've really listened to this, other than you hear these some of these songs in passing on jazz radio stations, or on hold music when it's jazz. Some of these are very popular. This album is argued to be one of the 2 or 3 best-selling jazz records ever made. So yeah, I've heard it, but it's been a while. So I was happy to come back around.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
My expectations, Petey. This is the slowest underhand pitch you've ever given anybody. This is Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. Miles Davis, a guy known for being really good at the horn, and the best album he's ever made, with people like Coltrane and Chambers. Yeah, I'm familiar. No, it's Miles Davis. Like I sort of was expecting to get some good jazz, oddly enough, and from a pioneer in the genre. So I don't know. Maybe I got that. Maybe I did not get that. We'll get into that in the B block.
This was, I felt like this was something worth talking about, at least for, once. It's a very interesting album. Like I said, it was introduced to me in school. So obviously, it's, read the Wikipedia article, by late 1958, Davis employed one of the best and most profitable, it's modal jazz. If you know what modal jazz is,
if you don't, click on the link on Wikipedia, and it'll tell you all about it.
It'll tell you all about it.
It's exactly what it sounds like. It uses modes in jazz.
Yes.
I don't know what modes are. They're scales.
Dictionary defines modal jazz as.
It basically, and like looking at it's
modes are not necessarily scales, but they're closely related.
Closely related.
Right.
He went from
building. Yeah.
He used to do, basically Miles Davis used to do crazier shit in a hard bop style, with more improvisation, and complex shit. And he decided he experimented a little bit with modes in the previous album, and he decided, hey, let's do this, doing a whole album on it. Hey, dudes that I hang out with and play music all the time, let's do this for a whole album. It's like, hey, cool. And they did it, and it's cool, and it's fun, and it's interesting and kind of cool to kind of sit down and groove to. Like, it has a lot of things going for it. It's straightforward. It progresses well. It's musically, it's cool and interesting and smooth. I'm not the best at describing things from a musical standpoint, so I'll leave it to you guys. But it's a cool record that does a lot of really good things really well, jazz wise, as people have said before. Brett, what would be the musical themes and elements that you would draw from this?
Well, first off, I got to say, Chekhov's roast beef sandwich came, so I had to have that in the camera. I just remembered that there's a 4-up shot of all of us, so you got to see me eat some roast beef. So now I'm super powered by roast beef to tell you that this is there's some amazing things going on in this album that was probably not powered by roast beef. But the trumpet work is obvious. But it's fairly matched up with the work of the saxophones and the piano. On the recording that I heard this time, the bass sounded a whole lot better. Yeah. It gets the Milady tip of the hat. It's a pretty awesome sounding for the time. And the quality of the recording originally, I was really the low end sounded really good. The tightness is fairly unmatched, I guess, by modern comparisons. That for musicians of this level to be able to get together, get along, get through some sessions, lay something down like this, and be at the skill that they are, I could not imagine getting around that many people at that level and trying to get anything done. And I'm not even one, but yeah, you could look up every person who has worked on this album and go down the rabbit hole in Wikipedia. Like, every person that worked on this album could have been like, yeah, you can go down a Spotify rabbit hole with them. But there were a lot of huge people that really came together. And luckily there's only a few tracks on this album. This is the fewest tracks of an album that we have. So when we get to the 5 choices of songs that we get to talk about, we can sort of break down what really worked. And also, the drums. I also wanted to like the way that the hi-hat comes in and works with the bass, and like every now and then like the horns will be doing their own thing, piano will be doing its thing, but then they'll like shift, and all of a sudden the bass will start walking, and the drum will like do a little shuffle and go ride the ride, and it really does a lot for me. I liked it. It was like a shifting of gears.
Yeah. Patrick, what would be the themes and elements that caught your attention?
If you were to make a murderer's row of jazz musicians in 1959, everyone on this album would be included. It's basically all the some of the best of that era. So basically every single part, if you pick an instrument and you follow it, it probably does something awesome in a song. I am not a jazz head. I do not understand everything. I know what a mode is in the I can read a definition and vaguely understand its sense, but I never got far enough into music theory to ever really understand them. And I played jazz at a very young age, and I sucked at improvising, of which this album is kind of heavily relies on, improvisation on a basic theme. But what you see, especially in some of the tracks more than the others, is jazz. What jazz is very often, especially this era of jazz until it got a little crazier later, there's always sort of a hook or a theme that it comes back to, and then everybody takes their solo, and it, bounces around between the two. It's kind of like a verse chorus thing in pop music, just, usually all instrumental and a lot more complicated. And this is, if you don't understand jazz, this is not a bad way to get in, because it's very foundational in everything that followed it, and it is in a lot of ways the culmination of everything that came before it. Again, I play trumpet, so everybody loves Miles Davis. He's fantastic at what he does. He's one of the best ever, if not the. But you also have, John Coltrane rocking on sax. Bill Evans and Wynton Kelly on piano, depending on the song, both of which really make their presence known. There's good bass lines, and I still will never quite understand jazz drums, but they're done well here.
Yeah. Less is more.
Yes.
That it's exactly what it is. It's the opposite of prog rock, where more is more.
Yes. I like to say, if peeing your pants is cool, then consider
very technical rudiments, but not like crazy use of all drums. Yeah,
it happened. Jazz drums are in weird moments. Yeah. Like there were people who definitely in this era were playing crazy ass shit in a jazz sense, but that usually tended to be more towards big band swing jazz rather than this, which is super.
They got to get the brushes out on this album.
Yes.
Big band, you got to be banging.
Yeah.
Drew, what would be the themes elements that caught your attention?
I would like to piggyback on the sentiment that's happening right now and say that yes, indeed, this is some cool guy ass shit going on in this record, and I love me some of that type of jazz, but like. It's Miles Davis. Like, the dude's a jazz legend. Like, he's one of the compositional greats of any era. The dude could lead any band. He's the lead in this band, right? He's the band leader of a band that includes Paul Chambers and John Coltrane. Let's just talk about how weird that would have been for just a hot minute. But so there's a lot I could say about that, and it's been said before ad nauseum. it's a great album in general, but I think something that sort of caught me, because I've been getting into this conversation with folks like at work and stuff like this, like while I was listening to this record, but what caught me in a cool way was not how great this record is, not how great it was composed, not how great it was produced, but the imperfections in the record. In an era where everything is polished to a high sheen in music, where everything is overdubbed and made perfect, like even in like improv solos, there are no real improv solos anymore. They are thought out, pieced together, and put on the record. This, you could hear imperfections in the solos, and I think that gives credence to the fact that like these guys were just going in and like doing it. They were thinking about it, they were playing it, and then they were doing it. And that, I think, like demands respect to a point.
And it wasn't like the era of like Cannonball Adderley didn't like bump into a chair and make a big old squeaky noise. I mean, there was the professionalism of the recording was there, but like,
right.
Yeah, like it is great when you hear somebody miss a note.
Right. The first track has a dropped embouchure. And for all the horn players out there that know what the hell a drop embouchure sounds like, it comes out and you're like, oh, and then Davis just picks it right back up without missing a beat. And I'm like, all right, respect. Or respect, as some folks would say in the industry today. But that's inside baseball joke that I thought Petey was going to laugh at.
Yes. Well,
but
I was looking up something for research. Sorry.
Gotcha.
Sometimes I just it's like,
yes, but this is definitely, as we said before, this is getting into that like modal jazz. This is what sort of got into that. And I say scaled in a layman's terms for the ones in the audience that are not musicians, that don't prescribe to music theory. The solos in this are all based around a basic net framework of a musical mode, right? So it's having this in jazz as opposed to like the more hard bop, more free-formy stuff was actually the type of stuff I like in jazz more. This and fusion being probably my favorite types of jazz. As far as instrumental jazz goes, probably all jazz too. But overall, like just seeing this and how this is how a super group should be.
yeah. Yeah.
There are super groups like
This is a super duper group.
Super de duper, Dad.
I was going to bring up what was it? Styx.
Oh,
Trying to make a super group.
no.
And
Sorry. I do not mean to derail you. It just when somebody says super and there's a chance to say duper.
super.
Yes.
that doubles
duper.
down on
But
super.
I don't think we need to talk about that good. Or Chicken Foot or whatever they were.
God,
That
no.
band was
hey,
also
hey
not.
now. Chicken foot for 5 minutes was a great idea. So
For
was a great
5
idea.
minutes, it was a great idea. And then that song ended, and the next song started, and you were like, oh, this is going to continue to be a thing. But yeah, as we derail talking about the shittiness that is Chicken Foot, I'm going to go back into the awesomeness that is Miles Davis. Let's go back into that, please,
let's
because
go back.
this is considered his magnum opus for a reason.
Yeah.
There is no doubt about that.
Yeah, I will say what you said about like the imperfections. It maybe for some reason I just couldn't get it. It just got in my head and I had to let it out. It's like it made me think of the line in Almost Famous, where freaking what's his face, Billy Crudup's character, pulled aside Willie Miller. He's like, but it's not what you put in, is it? It's what you leave out. Listen to Marvin Gaye, a song like What's Going On, the single woo at the end of the second verse. You know that woo, the single woo. That's what you remember, the silly things, the little things. There's only one, and it makes the song. It's what you leave out. That's rock and roll. Obviously, we're talking about jazz, not rock and roll, but it's like those little things that you leave in or take out.
One vibra slap. If they had one vibra slap on this album,
A
I'd have
sproing.
the-
Where's the sproing?
there is no sproing. It's an album of all sproing.
And people call it a perfect record. We beg to differ.
There is not one air horn drop. There's not.
There's not a single line about trains.
No police
mama.
sirens.
You're swimming in horns,
Going
not
to
one of them
prison.
in air.
Or getting drunk. But yes.
I could just keep going talking about Squiggles music, but yeah, let's.
Yes. Enough going back to enough talking about David Allan Coe. Let's
Yes.
talk about, because there really is no. Though I am half.
That's going to
tempted
happen one of these days.
A David Allan Coe record.
Probably an awful one, but yeah.
Probably the one that has the song I sang last week. But that aside, talk about some key tracks. There's only 5 of them, so I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll talk about the opener of the song. We have "So What." It's an iconic song for a reason. It's known very well. It does a really good job of like everybody introducing themselves slowly throughout, like the beginning of the track. Like everybody comes in one by one, or to like just say, "Hey, what's up?" It builds really well. How you doing? And with I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Miles Davis is the last to introduce himself, and I think I remember it that way, which works out really well. It's like everybody comes in, and then lastly, it's Miles Davis, the star of the record, and it does a really good job of introducing who you're going to be listening to and what you're going to be listening to. Kind of like classic. That's why we call it the record breakers thing, because that is one of the most important things, is like we said before ad nauseum, the introducing yourself properly, and introducing what you do as a artist or as a band, and they did a great job. And one of my other favorite songs on this record, Flamenco Sketches. It just does a lot of really cool things with what it does, with the different parts, with everybody's kind of like their thing, doing their thing. Like it just does it really well, like especially the horn stuff. It all builds really well, and it's just feels really cool altogether. Like it's one of the it's whenever when I used to work as a guy selling high end audio gear, we had turntables, and we had Kind of Blue on vinyl, and I would, when I wanted to play a song from that record, I would put on Flamenco Sketches. I don't know if it was the right song to put on, but it just felt like a good song to put on, and for a reason. Like they were just something that it made, especially on really good speakers, especially on a pair of Diamond Series 802s from Bowers and Wilkins, is real nice. Very nice. Very nice. But yeah, Brett.
Smooth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about some tracks. Let's narrow down. Let's bear down. Let's bury in.
Let's whittle this down to its essence, track by. I think I'll review 2/5 of this album. That sounds like a fair amount.
Yes.
This is an album that's it's made for like passive consumption. You just kind of put the record on and let it go. It's not really got a hot dance club mix that you're playing over and over. It's sort of it not as much as it doesn't bounce around like the album I brought with that was specifically playing with different styles. You pretty much get what you come into, but like when the album opens up, I think I listened to an NPR show that talked for like half an hour about the first minute of this song and about how iconic it is. So I'm going to try and be as sort of broad as I can here without getting too weird. The beginning is like it's the super iconic. Everybody knows what album you're listening to when it opens up, just the way that it sort of all comes in, and it's something that even people that aren't into jazz know. I personally really like the way, again, how you start playing along and then all of a sudden the drums hit snare, 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 bass line starts walking one way, the drums hit, and they sort of shift into another direction. For as much as you're going to break down on an album that's not really made to be doing that kind of stuff, you're not going to get some banging Yngwie licks or anything going on in this album. But I really enjoyed that. There's some real subtlety to the work of the people in the back. It's really fun. And Freddie Freeloader, I enjoy that because that's some fantastic piano jazz. It's the kind that I subscribe to. It's something that a casual listener can follow, because a lot of times with jazz, things start jumping off and your ear doesn't go to where your ear expects things to go. You don't have that awesome, it's not minor pentatonic. You don't know where the next note's going to come before it comes a lot of times. But this, it's the instruments, and they work like the human breath. That was one thing that I was taught when I was trying to play when I was trying to improv on guitar, is people are used to listening to people talk in breaths, and then they stop. They're pauses. And if you give too long of a string of information, people get more and more people drop off the longer you go. So if you do things in tight little licks, sort of like a vocalist would do, and accentuate similar to that, it makes it a lot more digestible. And this is great at that. The beat is simple and tight, and I really enjoyed the room echo when you got the saxophones, especially the amount of echo bouncing around there was pretty cool. It was definitely not out of a box hanging on a rack. That was some awesome recording space, and for some reason it was mainly the saxophones that you were getting most of it. I don't know what they were bouncing off of or whatever, but I thought that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. But those are probably the two go-to songs that I would send somebody to.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, how would you drill this down? What would be some key tracks for you?
So I'm going to talk about the ones I used to play in long ago. The opener, So What? Great freaking bass line that I don't think I appreciated as a child, but really now, that's a great bass line. And it has a really good hook. The sort of, I don't know what the jazz term is for the little theme they return to every time, but it has a very, very good one, and one that is iconic and memorable for a reason. It's a really, really, it's an enjoyable song. And then Freddie Freeloader, for two reasons. One, my aunt used to have a cat named Freddie the Freeloader, in part because of this song, and partially because he was a stray and he was a freeloader. But he was a good cat.
A cat, of course he's a freeloader.
Yeah, but he was
a cat ain't paying his way.
A cat ain't paying his way. Yeah.
Would you say? Would you say he was?
Oh, sorry.
Would you say he was?
These are people who also had a cat named Harry Truman. Harry Truman.
Would you say he was Hep Cat?
Perhaps.
There's a long road to go, Petey. You waited a long time. It was worth it. Don't let anybody tell you any different.
So I'm always all for anything that can make a vague reference to a ska band.
Yes.
Because that's what I'm reminded of every time I hear the word Hepcat.
Yes.
It makes me smile. Because ska.
Yes.
So about cats. Let's talk about cats here. What about cats?
This week on Cat Breakers.
Yes. Let's not break any cats. Poor little guys.
Yes, that sounds like a deeply fucked up show that someone on this. Yeah.
Sounds like
not even doom music can make that okay.
Yeah. It's like sounds like a theme to a Cannibal Corpse song. That nobody will know.
No, they only talk about killing humans. They don't kill anyone else.
Okay. I wouldn't know.
Terrible.
I wouldn't know because I.
Oh, but are you saying Cannibal Corpse's The Bleeding needs to come to the show?
No.
Needs to read that lyric.
Nope.
We will. That will probably just get. We can make that really quick episode where everybody just does the critic line.
Nope.
Everybody just does. It stinks.
It
That's
stinks.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So briefly, just to touch on Freddie the Freeloader, and then I will cede the rest of my time to the rest of the crew. The piano on it's really good. Wynton Kelly makes his triumphant return to the show to do this and be awesome at it. And basically, like we were talking about it, like when people talk about jazz being cool, they're talking about that song. That's that, like, to me, if you're gonna like jazz is cool as a phrase and you're gonna like cite it, you just cite Freddie Freeloader. It's such a good song, and really, I think it's one I remember playing fondly, if poorly.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be some the tracks for you?
Okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb and for a couple of these try not to mention too much of Miles Davis. Because he's Miles Davis, you could talk about him forever. So what? With that in mind, the piano intro is something that's just awesome. It just dives right into it. Mid-tempo jazz is sort of like I said before, it's cool ass shit. Like, it's that like cool eye finger popping awesome shit, right? So yeah, I might be driving a shitty Sebring down the road in the falls, like trying to get home from work. But God damn it, I listen to this in my mind, I close my eyes for a second at a red light. I'm in an E-type Jag, and that's okay. That swinging drum, the walking bass line, it's just got that feel to it. It's that song that, like, it's first for a reason. It lets you know, like Bill Evans, Paul Chambers, Jimmy Cobb, they're there, and they're going to make their presence felt. And it's felt in this song very, very well. Blue and Green, I think that slowing it down after a couple of swinging tracks, getting something a little more subdued there is cool. If the first two tracks were like more finger poppy jazz, this was more of that like jazz in a nice like restaurant sort of quiet, moody, groovy jazz. And then flamenco sketches. My God, I love flamenco sketches. It's just one of those tunes. Straight mute on a trumpet, something special. Coltrane being Coltrane. What are you gonna say about that guy? It lets you know, like, it leads you away from the album, letting you hear every bit of what this group of guys was about in music, and it didn't do it in a boisterous way. It didn't do it in a like insanely show-offy way. It just put the perfect bow on the end of an album that was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I was looking things up like as I do on Wikipedia for of the album, and I went into the Blue and Green track, and of course there's probably people know that there's a dispute of who wrote the album. Was it just Miles Davis or was it Miles and Bill Evans? As is detailed in the Wikipedia article I'm reading here. I like this line. Evans recounted that when he suggested that he was entitled to a share of the royalties, Davis wrote him a check for $25. Which I just thought was just kind of funny. But yeah, kind of blue. Let's bring it back around the horn for some conclusive thoughts. Brett, what would be your conclusive thoughts on this album as a whole?
I mean, this album's something that people ought to listen to. You ought to go and listen to what other people do with these same songs. There are a couple songs on this album that I have heard other people play more than I have heard this version of. You can really get down on some the lovely fact of jazz being a copy and paste kind of an art, and you can see what other people do with what is here. This is a great foundation for a lot of musicians. And you can see how that this album affected the genre as a whole going forward. Nobody did the jump splits off of a Marshall stack, but this is a pretty hot album that you should be at least familiar with. You should be familiar enough to know that somebody is putting this on and playing it. That way you can be impressed. You might like win a second date by knowing that or something.
Yeah.
But this is like preferred reading before going into the world of jazz, because it gets weird. There's some stuff.
Yeah.
When it starts becoming math, this is the part that's not so much. You can just sit and listen and enjoy. So please, do yourself a favor and enjoy.
Yeah. Patrick, what would be your conclusive thoughts on this album?
It's read the Wikipedia. It's basically the quintessential album of its era and genre. I feel like if you are like I think all of us are, and the sort of person where their desire to listen to music goes beyond that of normal rock and pop, this is kind of required listening. It's like those books they make you read in high school, not all of which are your favorites, but like you learn something by reading them.
Like a tender.
We all have those. It's not the Scarlet Letter, which is garbage, but
Chocolate War.
Oh, that one.
Letter wasn't that bad.
Scarlet Letter is garbage.
I mean, it was no 1984, but like
No, 1984 is terrific. You should have to read that one.
I'm not going to have an opinion.
Fahrenheit 451. You should have to read that one. Fuck the Scarlet Letter.
It's about television.
Yeah. So again, you should listen to this record. And I think it's fairly approachable for someone who's not super deep into jazz, because I am not super deep into jazz, other than I really enjoy like crazy fusion jazz in a weird way. But like this is not a thing I know enough about music to really understand, but I still enjoy listening to it.
Mm-hmm. Shine on, Pony Boy. Drew.
I want some reggae.
I was trying to make an Outsiders reference, but
it's Stay Golden.
Stay Golden, Pony Boy. I didn't have the Wikipedia article in front of me.
I read all those books like half a dozen times. Yeah. I had nothing to do in middle school.
Drew, what would be your conclusive thoughts on this album?
Well, on this album, how can you say anything about this album without sounding like, look, people, hey, we're four dudes talking about music, and guess what? This is Miles Davis.
Ain't none of us qualified.
If you've listened to a lot of music before this, and you know about anything about making music, you've probably heard this guy's name before. If you haven't, fix your problem. But I'm willing to bet people that take the time out of their week to listen to a podcast of four idiots talking about music will probably like music. And if you like music in any sense of the word, this is Miles Davis. He is a name you've probably heard, even if you haven't heard his music. This is the album that is considered quintessential jazz. This is considered one of the cornerstones in the genre. This is one of the cornerstones in music history. It is the best-selling jazz record for a reason. It is approachable, but it is still deep and has a lot going for it. And it really, like, sort of pushed a lot of more modal styles of jazz, which, again, I think are the more approachable, more fun styles of jazz in the first place. It's Miles Davis. Like, the guy might have been a bit weird
of jazz music.
Yes.
No, it is not the Dark Souls of jazz music.
It's the Demon Souls.
It is. No, I would say it's not any of the Souls games, because this is not hard to get into.
Yes.
Those games are hard. This is the Super Mario of jazz. It is easy to get into, but there's a lot of depth and freedom there for you to explore, if you so please.
A dinosaur, but yes.
Yes.
I didn't say it was the Yoshi's Island of jazz.
Crayons, everybody. This album,
which is better than Super Mario World, apparently.
Hey, if you watch your... Stop. We got to stop.
You're just lying to people.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, so this was the risk of having another It's Fucking Rush episode.
Yep.
So I apologize to Squiggles on that front. But I figured that with this, there was probably at least a sizable amount of people, of anybody that even bothers to listen to the show, that probably hasn't gone out and sought out this record and probably hasn't listened to it. It's one of those, like, when you talk about those iconic artists that influence music, and then people that are smart about music tell you that stuff is it could feel like it would be homework to go and check it out. Like, it's like the books you get, like Patrick said, like the books you get in school that you have to read for school assignments and whatnot. But there's a reason for that. And it doesn't make it not a cool, fun, good record to go back and listen to. Everything about this is very well played. It's got the perfect imperfections. It's got some of the best musicians in the history of jazz. And it's just a damn good record to go back and listen to. And it should be one of your foundational records to have in your arsenal. And you should go listen to it. That's it. I'm not going to prolong things. Yeah, let's get right to the main event of the evening. Our haiku reviews. Yeah. I'll start with you, Brett. Brett, what is your haiku?
Some critics can call the greatest album ever. This one's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, what is your haiku?
Songs I've played before that I understand more now. Cool, exemplified.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what is your haiku?
Beautiful trumpet, a supergroup that wasn't, lovely modal.
Mm-hmm.
Although, because of what you said earlier, I almost want to change my last line to "It is fucking Rush," but that's neither here nor there.
It is fucking Miles.
I think Miles is 2 syllables.
This is more an exercise for
Miles.
the podcasters than it is for the viewers.
Yes.
The hard part is our part. The easy part is listening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, my haiku: a timeless standard. They teach you this stuff in school for a good reason. And yeah, that was Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. It is on our Spotify playlist, just the original album. You can go ahead and, if you're on that playlist, click that album for the I think the anniversary legacy edition that has a ton of different alternate takes. If you want to just sit there and listen to that, get the director's cut, the special edition Lord of the Rings director's cut edition of this album, and have a ball with that. So you can do that. But there it is on our Spotify playlist, all neat and nice. On that Spotify playlist will be next week's record, and that will be provided by Patrick. Pat, what do you got for us next week?
Next week, we're going to listen to some bluesy-ass roots rock with Larkin Poe and their latest album, Reskinned.
Mm-hmm. Don't do that. But that's next week. This is this week. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. Patrick is at The Swagger. Brett is at Hey Bitty Bearbird, HIBBITYBIBBARD. Drew is at XDrucerForX. I'm at Petey Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers, RecordBreakersPodcast.com, RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com, Rebelli TV on YouTube, Twitch, Rebelli.net for this and other shows. All over the places: iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Podcasts. Go on there, subscribe, give us reviews, likes, give us some feedback. Tweet us, email us. We want to know that you're out there. Just let us know what your thoughts are on this album in particular, or any of the albums review. If you agree, disagree, let us know. We're glad to get feedback. But yeah. Until next time. Hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo.